Fahle, and I'm right here with Lauren Oliver right now, and your new book is Rooms.
Yeah.
And I want to start because there's this weird distinction in writers, especially those that have sort of moved between young adult and adult books. One is an adult, they say, and one is a young adult. What do you think the distinction is? Because this one is being called an adult novel. You're first.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think the primary, kind of the most functional definition of young adult literature that I've ever found, just because it's the most simple and also the most broad, is that a young adult novel is a book narrated by a teenager in real time, meaning not from the perspective of or the vantage point of that teen after they've grown up, and then can thus judge their patterns of thinking and behavior. And of course, that ends up changing everything because adolescents have all of these strange fallacies in the way that they think and believe and act, actually, because they have very limited perspective and they tend to polarize things and exaggerate and globalize and personalize and all these other things, and you have to only use that schema of thought when you're writing teen books, whereas adult books, you don't. And in fact, I think there are adult books that are written from the perspective of teens or children, but usually there is some kind of distance where the adult self is also commenting on or able to comment on their way of thinking. So, in the case of Rooms, there is an adolescent character in the book, but there's also characters who are dealing with things like marriage and childbirth and what it means to have a family and be disappointed by those relationships. So all of themes and preoccupations that just don't belong in a teen book.
But without a doubt, there's going to be a lot of your readers who've grown up with your books who are going to be making the jump into Rooms. And it's not a huge leap because they know you so well already. Yeah,
well, I mean, hopefully, I think that it is true. I think it's hard for authors nowadays. There is kind of often an emphasis on or a desire by the publishing industry and even by the public to have writers write the same book again and again for the same audience and in the same genre. I've tried to resist that, and I've been lucky so far that I've been able to resist that. But at the same time, I do think that there's a centrality of theme and voice that all authors have that's going to carry you through their body of work, whether or not it's for an 8-year-old or for an 80-year-old. So hopefully, although Rooms, is an adult book, hopefully there are readers who will, again, read up to it and discover it. And it's very sweet, actually, because I've been publishing now, and, I've met girls who started reading me when they were 16, but now they're graduating college, and they're kind of ready to move into exploring different kinds of thematic territory. Yeah,
they're growing up with you. Yeah. This is a ghost story, which I think is really fun. I want to sort of first explore where the idea for ghosts came and what's your background with that.
My haunted background?
Yeah.
I mean, initially, yeah. So, first of all, I love classic Gothic ghost stories, of which this isn't exactly a part, because traditionally in ghost stories, the ghosts just exist as disembodied, featureless entities that are there primarily to terrify and spook the main characters. And my ghosts have voices and personalities, and they clash.
They're funny.
They're funny. Yeah, thank you. I'm like, yes, they are. They're hilarious. But really, I did start with the idea of basically being able to give voice to a house and its experience. And I think a lot of the book is about the way that places we live and objects we have become symbolic and bring us back and forth between memories and eras. We attach such significance to the physical objects we own and the physical places we live. I grew up in a very old house, and I used to lie in bed as a kid and think of, it had been built in the early 1900s, and think about had there been another, 12-year-old girl at some time 50 years earlier lying in bed, thinking of another 12-year-old girl who had laid in bed even earlier than that, and wondering about whether, who would come after me and be in that bedroom, and whether there was any way that kind of my presence would filter back to them. So I've always been really interested in that idea. I do also have a house that's supposedly haunted.
Oh, really?
So yes, I have not personally.
So you do have a background.
Yes, I do. I have a house that is supposedly haunted. Several friends have reported sleeping in the one particular room and having the same dream of the same little girl.
Yeah.
And then apparently once a visitor to the house saw an old woman's face in the window. So.
Well, I love the use of the house as another character in the book, and the family, and the sort of some of the dysfunctions of the family, but also the individual stories within the family are a huge part of it, and that obviously what drives a family and family dynamic. But the house became part of the family to me, and each room has a sort of characteristic, as you said, and you sort of broke it up that way, which is fascinating. I've never seen another book like that.
Thank you. I was really, I mean, that's absolutely what I was trying to juggle and manage. It was really challenging and hard. I mean, there were so many formal challenges to having two narrators who can't interact. They have no agency. So they can't interact with the physical world. I had to constrain all of the action to within the house, and that's part of the reason I always joke that like the Walker family, the living family members are so dysfunctional, because I needed them to get into a lot of fights and have a lot of drama since I didn't have a huge world in which to act. And then, yeah, no, that's exactly kind of what, and then there's a slow convergence of kind of the living and the dead and the secrets and how they unfold, ultimately become entangled. As the house kind of starts getting stripped down of all of its, you know, all of the objects that have accumulated. So there's a sense of peeling back, or that's what I was going for.
Yeah, you live in Brooklyn now, you said, but you said you grew up in a big old house where the other families live. Tell me more about like growing up and in that house. Did you have your own room, or did you share bedrooms?
Yeah, it wasn't a huge house, but I did have my own. Well, at some point, I shared a room with my sister at first. My parents are literature professors, so we had this. You know, it was a small house, but very old, very beautiful, and just literally books in every room. You know, always there was kind of a fluid. I had a very fluid understanding of the relationship between reality and fiction growing up. My parents really encouraged creativity. They were both storytellers. They'd read poetry at the dinner table. My mom always narrated to us this long epic about a girl and her flying horse before we went to sleep. And then when my parents left the room, my sister and I would stay up making up stories together, you know, when we were supposed to be sleeping. I did eventually inherit my own room, so that was a triumphant moment in my life. My sister moved downstairs. But I actually do think that growing up in that house really did influence me and my subsequent kind of career choice, because I do think that there was this way in which storytelling and narrative was really, really built into my early experiences.
Well, I'm glad it did. And I'm glad you've made this really fun jump.
Thank you.
And I do say fun. I felt like I wasn't sure what to expect when I got it, but there's definitely this story within a story, and the ghosts make it really kind of almost comedic in a way.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's a wonderful book, and thank you for being with us
Oh,
today.
thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
Yeah.